Okay, well, we've talked a lot about stress, and we've talked about Maslow's, we've talked about a lot of things. But now we're going to talk about something that is really important. Now that we kind of understand stress and we understand what it does to the body. I mean, we spent the whole last video talking about all the things that happen to your body when you're stressed. You know, in the constricted blood vessels in your muscles and your brain, and the dilated eyes and the dilated brachial tubes, and the sweating, and the stomach stops. Paralysis of the stomach means it stops working, and then the anal and the urinary sphincter close, and all these different things. Now, once again, if you're in an emergency, okay, and it's even a minute or 2 minutes or even 5 minutes, I mean, that's just going to increase what they call your WIP. We talked about that earlier, your mental capacity, and to think quick, and also increase your ability for all 5 of your senses and that kind of thing. But when we get past the 4 different types or the 3 different types of stressors, we get past environmental, we go to psychological stressors and social stressors, some of those things we got to let go of. Okay, we got to let go of. Now, here we go. Coping with stress. Okay, coping with stress. Now, there's 4 different methods of coping with stress, and let me just tell you the 4, and then we'll go over them. Okay. So 4 methods of coping with stress. Now, once again, this is going to be nice for the test, but I think it's important for us, especially with growth and development and psychology and life in general. You will have stressors. You've got to recognize a good stressor from a bad stressor. A good stressor is, yes, I need to be on top of my game and solve this, and I've got a problem. But a bad stressor lasts for a period of time, and it's not something that you can do something about, so you've got to cope with it, okay? All right? So environmental stressors usually are a quick one, okay, but psychological or social. Our society has more social stressors. Psychologists say our society has more social stressors than ever before in history. And so social stressors are a problem because we don't generally act on them and do something right then. Instead, they continue to go and cause all these body reactions to happen. So let's go through these. Okay, so once again, the ways to cope with stress are preparation, okay, preparation, confrontation, coping, and self-reinforcement. Okay, let me give you those. There's 4 of them. Okay, so 4 ways to cope with stress. Preparation, all right, that's 1. Confrontation, okay, that's 2. Coping is 3, and self-reinforcement is 4. So let's go through those now. Let's talk about those, and let's make sure that we understand what we need to do in each one of those 4. So in preparation, okay, in preparation, let me just kind of give you some things out of the book. These are examples of self-statements to yourself, okay? So these are examples of statements that you say to yourself and that you're dealing with when you're dealing with stress, okay? Once again, if you're taking psychology, 80% of all of the conversations that you have, of all the interaction that you have, is actually with yourself. And people are like, "Oh, that's weird." No, you really control what you hear and what you don't hear. If you're beating yourself up, you need to change that and start encouraging yourself some, because you don't need to be beaten up by yourself 80% of the time of the different input that you have in your body. But okay, so these are examples of coping self-statements. In preparation, I can develop a plan to deal with this. Okay, I can develop a plan to deal with this. All right, so think about preparation. What do we do when we prepare? When we prepare to make something, we're getting everything ready. This is at the beginning or even before a stressor occurs. Even before a stressor occurs, I've got a plan for that. Whenever this happens, I'm going to do this and this and this. Okay? All right. So once again, this is preparation. I'm going to, so number 1, I can develop a plan to deal with it. Okay? And think about which one of these things you do or what you should do to relieve stress. Think about which one of these these statements are the best and which one you do, because you have to do a combination of them. The second statement here is just think about what I can do about it that's better than getting anxious about it. In other words, what can I do about it? What can I do to solve the problem? Okay? I don't know about you, but I have to have a plan. As soon as I have a plan, then I no longer have the stress. Now, I might still have a problem, but the stressor goes away. It's like, okay, well, I'm just trying to think of an example. Okay, tomorrow something's going to happen. I'm like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to do this and this and this, and I'm preparing myself for the stressor, or I'm preparing myself for the next step of the stress. Okay, and then no negative self-statements. Just think rationally. Okay, no negative self-statements. That's telling yourself that. Just think rationally. Like quit worrying about something that may never happen. Okay, I don't know how many conversations you've had like this, and you have a racing mind. Okay, when you have stress, you have a racing mind because you're increasing your mental activity. So somebody says something to you, and you can fill in the blank. And we've all had this happen. So if you've never had this happen, I bet you have. You're just not thinking along the same lines. You had a bad conversation with somebody, and you're not going to see them until the next day or the next week. And so when you go home, okay, you're rehashing it. They said this and I said this, and then you start filling in the blanks. Hey, and tomorrow when I see them, I bet they tell me this. I bet they say that. And if they say that, then I'm going to say this. And then they'll probably say that. And then I'll say this. And then I know they're going to say that because that's just who they are. Okay? You see what I mean? So we play out this conversation in our mind. Now, I don't know about you, and those may happen and they may come out that way, but usually when I do that, I go the next day and I go, hey, how's it going? And they go, good. And I'm like, cool. And that's it. And I worried about all of that stuff. Now, so what they're saying is preparedness. It's okay to get a plan. It's okay to do a little bit of that. It's okay to get a plan. What am I going to do if this happens? What am I going to do? You know the old saying, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So it's okay to do that a little bit. But then it says the way you're going to have to get rid of that stress is think rationally. So then it's going to be done. Then I'll solve the rest of that. If there's more problems with that, I'll solve it later. Think rationally. Don't go irrational. Oh, then they might pull out a gun and they might shoot me. Oh, well, that's irrational thinking. And you're like, no, I know that person. They can do that. Now, that's when you go, oh, I got a plan. I know what I'm going to do. And your plan's not to get another gun. Your plan is something logical because if your plan is a bad plan, then it's going to cause more stress. Okay? So once again, preparation. Think about it. What can I do? If you have a stressor, what can I do tomorrow? Or if a stressor's coming on, what can I do? You might have trouble getting along with somebody, and every time they come along, it could even be a family member. Okay, and it's like, oh my gosh, this person's causing so much stress. Or it could be someone at school or someone at work or whatever. So you have preparation. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Whenever I deal with this person. So you prepare. Okay. Then the next one is confrontation. Okay. The next one is confrontation. These are self-statements. Okay. So you're telling yourself, one step at a time, I can handle this situation. Confrontation, preparation is ahead of time. Preparation is, this is what I'm going to do to prepare for the stress coming. Confrontation is, okay, it's right on me. I didn't even see this coming. I didn't even know this was going to happen. I didn't know that this person was going to say this about me. Okay? So you're just telling yourself one step at a time. One step at a time. What can I do to handle this situation? One step at a time. And then another thing you can say to yourself is relax. I'm in control. Take a slow, deep breath. Okay, this person is saying or doing this, or we have this stressor and it's confrontation. And so you know right away that you're going to have all these things happen. You're like, okay, my body's just kicked into gear. You're like, take a deep breath. You're like, don't put your body into stress over this. Okay, that's confrontation. All right. And then there's coping. Okay. Now, coping means how are we going to deal with that? So we have preparedness. What are we going to do ahead of time? Coping, what are we going to do when it hits us when we don't expect it? Coping, how am I going to deal with it on a regular basis? When fear comes, just pause. That's a self-statement, okay? Keep focused on the present, what I have to do. Don't try to eliminate the fear, okay? Just try to keep it manageable. And it's not the worst thing that can happen. So sometimes in coping, okay, I like that last one. I think I don't know which one you do, okay? So whenever you have something happen and you see it happening, this is more than just preparedness, it's something that just keeps happening. So I actually do the last one. The last one was just think about, it's not the worst thing that could happen, okay? And then there's actually one more. Just think about something else. Just try to think about something else. That's where somebody might say, go to your happy place. And you're like, oh, okay, it's fishing on a lake, or it's sitting under a tree, or it's wherever. And so your mind doesn't set and think about that situation. But the other thing is, it's not the worst thing that can happen. That person is really mean, and everybody really knows that person. So, and so you justify in your mind why it's happening, so that you can say to yourself, it's not the worst thing. It's not a stressor. It's not something that I need. It's not like being chased by a bear. And that's what coping is also. You have to say, when you deal with stress, okay, you have to say, this isn't something that I want to trigger my body with all these things. I don't need, and sometimes I tell myself, I'm not being chased by a bear. This is just an ornery person who's not being nice, or somebody that just doesn't understand, they're just causing stress in your life, okay? And the last one is self-enforcement. This self-enforcement is kind of after the stress hits, okay? So you're saying it worked, I was able to do it. In other words, you go, hey, I overcame that stress. Rather than starting the stress all over and rethinking about it. Another thing was, it wasn't as bad as I expected. Yeah, that could have been worse, okay, but it wasn't as bad as I expected. And the last one, I'm really pleased with the progress I'm making. So you're like, hey, you know what? In the past, I would have really stressed out over that. But now, you know what? It's not so bad. So those are the coping with stress, preparedness, confirmation, coping, and self-enforcement. So good thing to kind of think about as we go. We're going to end this class. Hopefully we're going to end it with you being able to deal with stress. But I've really enjoyed having you in class. We've really, all the different articles that we've had, this class has looked at a lot of research and all the psychology in your life and all the different things that you responded to, about 40 or 50 different articles that you've actually looked at and gone. We've learned a lot about growth and development, and I have really enjoyed having you in class. And with that, we're gonna call it quits for the class. And I just hope you're able to take some of this information and apply it to life as you go. And if nothing else, really remember the parts about stress, because stress is the one thing that, as a society, we really have to be careful with psychological and social stress, that we just don't let that eat us up. So thanks again, and I've enjoyed having you in class.